Today it's Neil McIntosh, who I'm going to call you a professional photographer. That's all right with you? No, you mustn't. No, I've said it now.
Right, okay.
Leave it to that. Leave it to that. Born in Essex, Dan Seth.
No, born in Nottingham, lived in Essex.
Oh, lived in it. Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh, well, Nottingham's all right then. That's acceptable. I was just going to take the mickey out of you then because I thought you might have been down south.
I can speak with a South accent. I've got no problem about that.
All right, mate. Yeah.
All right.
That was a pair.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your life then. In Nottingham.
Yeah.
Which part?
Pass. I was that young, I don't remember it, because we lived there, I think, for about 3 years when I was a sprog.
Yeah.
And went out to Nigeria. And also South Africa as well.
Back up a bit.
Okay.
Why did he go to Nigeria? Tell me about this.
Well, both of these were to do with my father's work. He's now retired, a dispensing optician.
Right.
And got a couple of contracts to go out there and if I remember rightly, teach people how to use the optical equipment.
Yeah.
My father spent quite a bit of time working in one of the hospitals there, showing people how to use certain items of optical equipment, etc.
What was it like for you then, living in Nigeria? Were you fairly young still then?
I was very young.
Yeah.
I would have been probably around about 5, I think, 5 or 6, something like that. So really, any memory of that I haven't got. And the same with South Africa. I've got a little bit of a memory there.
Just the heat, really, I suppose.
Just a bit of that, and as well, if I remember rightly, my parents got to know some people who were looking after or had something to do with a private game reserve, and we used to go there on occasion to stay for a few days. One of the big things I do remember about being over there, and this is where my love of nature has come from, was going out in an open-top Land Rover at stupid o'clock in the morning while they were tracking down giraffe and tranquilising them to put radio transmitter collars around the necks. And I was the one who was allowed to put the collars on. And you imagine something like that for a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
It's just the experience of a lifetime, whether you're 7 or 70. It's incredible.
So they're your sort of happy memories of that time.
Yeah.
And then how long did you stay out there?
In Nigeria, I think that was about 2 years. South Africa was about the same. Came back from there and lived in Hampshire for a good few years, just outside of Reading, a place called Mortimer, then to Basingstoke, where I went to school.
You're a bit like a traveller, aren't you? All over the shop, aren't you?
It hasn't finished yet, I can tell you that.
Carry on. I'm interested. Go on.
Right, well, from there in 79 we moved to a small village called Southwood Ferrers in Essex.
Yeah.
At the time it was a population of about 6,000 or 7,000, I do believe. And that's where my life really began.
Go on then. Why do you say that? Why do you make that statement?
Well, I mean, the last 2 years of school there, I wanted to do the cookery class, but they hadn't got any places left for somebody like me, and basically I ended up having to do your bog standard classes. While all that was going on, started getting a love of music, and just before this, prior to leaving Basingstoke, one of my school friends at the time was a guy called Clifford. I was around his house one day, and he put an album on by a band called Thin Lizzy. And first track I ever heard by Thin Lizzy, I fell in love with it. It was obviously old school heavy rock. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. Bought the album myself. And from then on is where I've listened to all that kind of stuff.
Is that Dancing in the Moonlight thing?
It is.
Great stuff. So, obviously, I mean, 1979, you're talking the Thin Lizzy, you're talking all the greats, White Snake, Rainbow,
AC/DC,
Queen. Have you into Queen?
I like
You're
Queen,
a bit harder, aren't you?
No. I'll listen to anything. I really will listen to anything. People who know me know that I'll listen to anything from Pavarotti through to Slipknot, for example. But my favourite bands have always been Thin Lizzy, because of it was the first band I ever heard, and AC/DC, because it was the first band I ever saw live in 1980. Now, where I come to with regards to my love for music and Essex is while I was at school, one of the lads there was a guy called Larry. He was 15, 16, an absolutely incredible guitarist for his age. And I used to go around his and just be in awe of watching and listening to him play. Bought myself a bass guitar, and I used to go around there and jam with him. And that was one of the tracks, funnily enough, the Thin Lizzy one, that we used to jam together to. Larry sadly passed away when he was 18, but he was one of these where if you looked and you think he could have had such a career, because there were a couple of times he was badgered into getting up on stage with one of the local bands, and he went down a storm. You know, he'd really got the talent, the circumstances just happened. You can't help these things. But from there, then I started hanging around with a guy called Simon Frost, who happens to be my partner in crime, shall we say, and he's listening this morning. He's another guy called Ray Wells.
So we're doing one of these with his thumbs, or what's he going to say next?
Oh, he's got his hands over his eyes right now, I can promise you that.
See no evil, hear no evil.
Yep.
You are a photographer, but you've done so many things in the past, haven't you? We've talked about your life romping across the world there and all the different places, etc. And did you not spend a time in Spain? España?
I did indeed. It was in the north, the Basque Country, rather than the south. Although I did spend the first couple of years were in Mallorca, working in a hotel there. The story behind all this is that over here in the UK, I was working at a company in Birmingham doing credit control, and met a lady from the Basque Country there, fell heavily in love with her, and she had to go back to Spain for one reason or another, and I decided to follow her.
Right.
Went over there, couldn't speak a word of Spanish, and had to try and find a way of obviously learning the language and also make ends meet. So worked in a couple of places, didn't work out, got a job in a hotel in Mallorca. It was the Marriott's Son Antem, it was a 5-star resort. They'd recently opened. Started there as a night auditor, which is effectively somebody who opens and closes the computer systems and still does all the reception duties as well.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, learnt a lot of the language while I was working there. Now, in the couple of years there, I got promoted very, very quickly up to a very good position, shall we say. And some of the experiences I had in that hotel, obviously, there's a lot that you can't say at this time of day.
I've got to find out some of them.
I'll tell you after the show.
No.
But one of them was actually quite incredible. Close to where the hotel was, there was the training centre for one of the big airlines, and one of the regular guests in the hotel was the chief pilot for the European pilots for Air France. And he was also the instructor. Now, I got used to get talking with him quite regularly about planes, because I've always had a love of aviation anyway. And he turned around to me one night, just before he was about to go off to bed. He said, you doing anything in the next couple of days? I said, well, apart from working. No, he says, right, okay, I want you back here at 9 o'clock on, I think it was Friday morning. I said, fine, okay. Went back at 9 o'clock on the Friday morning. He says, right, I'm going to take you somewhere. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute.
Hello.
Yeah, Liz.
Hello.
Are we talking a bit dodgy here or what?
Hey.
So anyway, get in the car with him, drive about 10 minutes down the road, and it's to this centre where they do the pilot training. Walk in, and it's the training centre for it was when they just brought out the Airbus A320, and they'd got one of the big simulators there. And he says, right, I'm going to let you sit with me and watch me train somebody. And I thought, wow, fantastic. Sat in the simulator, watching what he was doing behind the scenes, causing an engine fire at 3,000 feet and then fog at 2,000 feet for a trainee pilot.
Yeah.
Then he says to me, right, jump in the pilot seat. And I'm like, hang on a minute. This is God knows how much multi-million-pound simulator, and you want me to have a go? I'm no pro. He says, yeah. He said, jump in. Was allowed to fly the A320 simulator from start to finish. I flew from London Heathrow to Paris and back. Didn't even crash on landing, whereas the guy who was training did.
Oh, dear. It's over an hour's drive, that, isn't it?
Yep. But I was drive, well, yeah.
Fly,
Well, the way I was going, it was driving. But no, I mean, obviously, you cut the flight the time between, so it was really the takeoff and the landing that I was practicing. But it was just a heck of an experience, and how many people get to do something like that as well?
Absolutely fantastic. Good. We're talking about you in particular. You've travelled all over the place. You had a nice time in Spain, in northern Spain. I haven't been there. I've got to go there one day.
Yes, it's a beautiful part of the world. I mean, from Mallorca, we had to go back to San Sebastián, which is, say, up in the Basque Country, very close to the French border. The lady's name is Lourdes Antha. She's still a good friend of mine. And we went back there because her mum was ill, and she'd taken ill with Alzheimer's, and obviously we had to go back up there to look after her because only child and no real family that were any close to her. Got myself a job working in a bar there, and that was quite an experience. It was a bar in what's called the Parte Vieja, which is the old part of San Sebastián, and it's an area that's frequented by, shall we say, people who are followers of and believers in a certain organisation with the initials ETA.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah. Now, the two guys who ran the bar unofficially, shall we say, had something to do with the group, although not in a terrorist type way. But I've got to say, they were probably two of the best bosses I've ever had in my life. They were absolutely fantastic, treated me with such a respect and a love. And I learned a lot of Spanish through them. I learned a bit of Basque. And I tell you what, it's probably the best 2 years of working experience I had in my life.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. When you say Basque, I always think something else. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. What would that be? Yeah.
No clue. 11 minutes past 11. This is BBC Radio Stoke. We're talking to Neil McIntosh. We're talking about, you're a photographer now, aren't you?
Yes and no. It's a hobby, but it started off really just as something to relieve the boredom. Bought myself a camera about 18 months ago, couldn't get on with it, was very disappointed with it, went to sell it in a second-hand shop and got rid of it. As I was walking out, I saw another camera, which, funnily enough, I brought with me.
That's lovely.
Yeah. There you go. It's a
Fujifilm.
Yeah, bridge camera. Saw that in the window, and I thought, well, there's something a bit different about that because it's manual zoom rather than trigger zoom.
Yeah.
Looked at a review up on the internet on my mobile phone, and I thought, wow, that's fantastic. So I paid £100 for it, which is what I sold my original one for. From there, it just started escalating. Started taking photos and sticking them up on Facebook, as most people do, and sending the photos to John Owen at the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust. And John liked the photos and started sharing them on his social media, which was a nice little thing, but I didn't think any more of it. Somebody then badgered me into making a calendar in December of last year, a lady called Claire Parker. She wanted a calendar, kept on, and in the end I said, yes, I'll do one. In 2 weeks, I sold 45 calendars without actually pushing it. Mm-hmm. The Express and Star picked up on my photos from the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust Facebook account, did an interview and an article on me in January about it all, and I've since been published about 9 times, I think it is, by them. Mail on Sunday, I entered their national competition last year, didn't hear anything, and got an email in January saying whilst I hadn't won, the judges, who included people like Bill Oddie, Ben Fogle, and people in the nature world, liked my photo that much that they still wanted to publish it. I was considered highly commended, so that was on their website, and it's still there now. What else? The Museum of Cannock Chase have invited me to hold an exhibition next year between October to December. Based on the work that I do, because you don't go to them, they come to you. Yourselves here at BBC Radio Stoke, this is now the 3rd time I've been on about all the photography, and all I'm doing is I'm just taking nature as I see it. I'm not a professional. I don't profess to be. I can't afford to spend the money on the gear, and neither do I particularly want to, but I'm just hoping that with the photos that I take, and I've now opened a proper Facebook page dedicated to it, I'm just hoping with the photos that I take, I show people what there is out there, because since I've been doing it, I'm seeing a lot of things that I never knew existed, and it's not because they're not there very often. They're there, but you just don't see them. You don't open your eyes and look.
Such as?
Silly little things, like there's a small green bug that, believe it or not, is called green flower bug. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's probably about inch and a half long, and it's almost a luminous fluorescent green. It's one of the most extraordinary colours in a bug here in England that I've ever seen. You can walk along and you won't see that anywhere. But now that I've seen one, I couldn't stop seeing them during the summertime. It's crazy.
There's one. There's another one.
Exactly. Yeah, and you stop and you watch things like the other day, a couple of months ago, I was trying to take some shots of the buzzards, and they flew off, obviously, as they do, because they're not particularly bothered about that. I'm sitting watching this bush, and there were some birds that were flying around together. It was about 2 or 3 lots of, there's no other way to put this, 2 or 3 lots of tits. There was long-tailed tits and blue tits, and there were a couple of wrens, and they were all fledglings, and they were actually playing together. They were chasing each other around this tree, and then stopping and having something to eat together, and then doing the same again. Now, if you don't look for that sort of thing, you'd never realise it's happening. And since then, I've spoken with a couple of people who are into wildlife. One of them is a guy called Simon Palmer, who is an absolutely brilliant photographer, who's picked up on my stuff by accident, and he's sort of encouraging me along the way, if you like. And they're all telling me, well, yeah, this is what goes on, but people just don't open their eyes to see it. And as I say, I'm just hoping that what I take shows people what there is and will encourage somebody to stand for another 5 minutes and say, hang on a second, I've never seen that before. I'm not into it for the fame, I'm not into it for the money, although obviously the money's nice. I'm not really making anything out of it. It's just for the love of it.
And that's it. That's the whole point. People are far too stressed to their lives, too many things to do. If you just slow down for 5 minutes, take a look at environments, watch things. I mean, you mentioned the tits, the little birds that flying around. I mean, you don't bother to look, do you? Just there's a bird and carry on.
Yeah.
Take your time to look.
Yeah. I mean, I had a friend came over and stayed here in Stafford, well, in Stafford for a couple of days, and I took her down for a walk along where I go, which is the canal in Stafford. It's down Rafford Bank, just down there by the car sales garage. That's where I go. It's about a 10-minute walk from my house. And I was walking down there with her and pointing out, oh, well, there's this, and if you look, there's that. And she'd never seen anything like that. It's not because she wasn't interested, but it's because she'd never opened her eyes and seen.
Yeah.
She wasn't looking for that sort of thing, And that, to me, is the greatest pleasure out of it.
So what's in the future for you then, Neil?
At the moment, no idea. I'm between jobs. I've got a couple of possibilities lined up that I'm just waiting to hear on. But in the meantime, it's just job hunting and out with my camera. That's what there is.
So if people think to themselves, yeah, I'd like to look at some of Neil McIntosh's photographs. What's your social media site?
Right, it's on Facebook and it's 2 words. It's called Argazki, Argazki.
Yeah.
And the second word is Mac, M-A-C, Argazki Mac. Argazki comes from the Basque word meaning photos. Rather than calling myself Neil McIntosh Photography, which I thought was one in a million sort of thing, and one of a million, should I say, something a little bit different. And that's where it comes from. That's where they look. Argazki Mac. I've got that on Facebook and on Instagram as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Neil,
Thanks very much.
Hope you find continued success with your photographs, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me.
No trouble. Could I just say hello to a couple of people?
Of course you can.
To my long-suffering parents, I love you deeply. To Ray, Simon, Mark down in Essex, you guys have been my friends for 30-odd years and over another 30 if we manage to last that long. To Lourdes over in Spain, muchas gracias, cariño, para todo. To FPB in Ireland, you know who you are and why you are. And all the guys at .com that I've been working with until recently in Tesco's and in general the Tesco's people there. Thank you very much. Love you all.
Oh, lovely. You take care.
Thank you.